well is the border security and immigration. And the big beautiful bill, it increases funding for border security and ICE detention deportation efforts while cutting Medicaid for undocumented immigrants. Supporters claim it strengthens national security, but opponents warn it fuels inhumane immigration policies and denies due process. We're going to deal with that inhumane immigration policy in just a little bit. But one thing I wanted to talk about is we remember in Trump's first administration that that Trump was talking about, I'm going to build a wall on the border of Mexico, and I'm going to get Mexico to pay for it, right? We remember how he ran on that, and sure enough, he actually started building it, and Mexico actually was paying for it. Actually, that was the funny thing about it. But nonetheless, when Donald Trump had lost or had the election stolen from him in 2020, the Biden administration was taking all the material and selling all of that material on pennies on the dollar, basically scrapping all of that metal that was purchased by us, by the American taxpayers. Now, they didn't have the entire material for the entire border itself, but what they did have at the time was getting sold. It was getting auctioned off. I think something like $5 for every $100.
That's the ultimate form of virtue signaling.
Yeah, exactly. And so essentially, with this one big beautiful bill,
I could use that aluminum.
The entire border is now going to be funded. And so there is a wall that is going to get put up from Texas to California. Now, there's already miles of, I think maybe like a few hundred miles, that have already been put up. But nonetheless, there is going to be what seems to be funding, and I hope it's going to cover it all. There's a lot of money allocated.
$46.5 billion for border wall construction and related expenses.
Yeah. So you would hope, I hope, but nonetheless, there's a wall coming, and hopefully it covers it all. Hopefully we don't need a bonus on that, but nonetheless, and also the ICE funding. Essentially, Tom Homan is getting a lot more money to allocate toward deportations. Yes, congratulations, Tom Homan. You have just been you are the next winner on The Price is Right. He has received all of his funding for the deportations, and so we are going to be seeing a lot more mass deportations. And I'm actually wondering, Brother Matt, supposedly, there's been a big struggle. They were just going after just the murderers, the very, highest, how could I say, the worst of the worst, okay, the criminals. They've been going after them mostly. And then they implemented something that was actually pretty interesting. They started paying. They started saying, hey, we'll give you $1,000 if you self-deport. And supposedly the numbers right now, as it sits, with the self-deportation, somewhere around 1 million is what I've heard. Now, I don't know how true that number is, but I'm wondering if maybe, as they're doing this, maybe they up it a little bit, maybe a little bit later down the road. They say, hey, we're going to up the ante a little bit. We're going to give you $2,000, if you self-deport. And then maybe up a little bit more, a little bit later on down the road, right? Maybe to 4,000 or 5,000, right? Because if the self-deport is so effective, and you got to figure, okay, if you have to hire more ICE agents, how much do they cost? How much is their yearly annual salary? How many ICE agents does it take, per deportation, basically? What is that worth? And, does it make sense then at that point, if we're having such a big success in the self-deportation process, maybe we just up the ante. We have a little bit more money allocated to the deportation process. You know, maybe we up the ante on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny. I think that these motivations are healthy. Uh, the online conservative Inc. seemed to be dissatisfied with the levels of deportation that was taking place, and then we saw quotas coming out saying they want to see at least 3,000 being deported per day, I believe, or at least being ascertained per day. And as we discussed previously in these episodes, our leader is not the Constitution of the United States. Our leader is Christ. We do live in this nation, and we want to adhere to the principles of our conscience and the current principles of the Scripture, which is difficult to do in light of the laws of the land and how it's been manipulated and taken advantage of by the conspiratorial Biden cabal over the course of the last 4 years. We saw them ramping up at Home Depots and Lowe's and deporting people. And I was even commentating on how people in Spanish churches had not been coming to churches in Illinois as I had been visiting. So, our hearts are definitely with the people. I saw a gentleman sitting who lives next door to me. I just saw his face today, and he's Hispanic, and he's sitting in his van. His van's not starting, and I know this van is how he makes a living. This is how he provides for his family. And I'm constantly reminded of the humanitarian crisis, and again, just constantly guarding ourselves anytime I bring up immigration, because I know it's so divisive in how they've deployed this headline of this news in order to not only destroy the United States and try to win all of the swing states permanently, but destroy our hearts and minds of compassion for one another and seeing us all equal as human beings. And I really want Conservative Inc. to calm down on these desire to get people who have been here for 10, 15 years and to find a way of keeping them in the country, as we've discussed in the past. It's pretty much a non-debatable for me. The idea that we were simply going after only violent criminals, I never believed that fully, but I did expect that to be the beginning, and I think he's done a very good job, at least in the headlines that we've seen produced over the last 7 months, that's been successful. But now I think we need to tread very lightly in order to preserve not just the rule of law, but our conscience as a people that really is built on legal immigration. And unfortunately, when the law has been broken, we do have to get people out. So the idea of upping that, I think, is very humanitarian and a very Christ-like way of handling it, as well as saving money in the long run.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, it's just like anything else, right? Like anybody that's in a role of authority, the Bible talks about, in Romans 13 that how God desires for government to work is the ruler should not be one who carries the sword in vain, right? He is not a terror to good works, but to evil. And so that would also should carry over into the ICE um department, so to speak, right? The immigration department is, they shouldn't do it, that job, as something to be done in vain. In other words, abusing their authority, um, having racist thoughts or discriminative actions, or and that type of thing. And of course, every entity is always going to, you're going to have your good and your bad in every group, in every country, in every idea. You're going to have your good and your bad. And I hope that, yeah, I like what you said. I think that there should be still, we should still act in a way that is respectable, will treat people humanely. And, but obviously there's also too that the dangerous ones that, hey man, look, If you got to get the job done, you just got to do the job. And sometimes it's going to be rough. Sometimes it's going to be a really hard job. Especially when you're dealing with people that are not necessarily the nicest people, people that are part of MS-13 gangs and Tren de Aragua, things like gangs like that and immigrants like that. I mean, these guys are going up against some tough
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
And
it's
I
a
think it's a good
balance, man.
transition point. I think it's a good transition point. So
Yeah.
we ended off here discussing immigration relative to the $46.5 billion of funding for the creation of a border wall in the Big Beautiful Bill. However, at this point in time, we can sort of segment to the latest ICE adventure, which is being called Alligator Alcatraz over here in Florida. And I'll tell you one thing, you know who I'm against? We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities, and rulers of darkness. But I also wrestle against you bugs. I'll take a human being over a bug any day of the week. I've got this mango tree in my front yard, and I'm on keto, so I don't even eat these mangoes. And I went outside to get into the car the other day. I don't even know why I'm telling this story, but went outside and I get in the car and there's an old lady, probably got to be in her 80s, picking up one of my mangoes off the ground. And as I came outside, she wants to give it to me. She's like, "Oh, here you go. I picked this up for you." And I'm like, "You didn't pick that up for me. You picked it up for yourself. You enjoy that mango because I don't want the bugs to get them. I'm against the bugs. How dare all of these miserable bugs eat all of our fruit? These things are God. The way that God designed us, we really do have to fight. The fruit falls off the trees, and the first people to have access to us are these ants, these rodents, and all of these insects. And we've got to rush in order to be able to get this thing that God created for us. Before they take it. And what do they even do? They just create this little blackness on there. They try to scurry inside of the fruit. I don't know what I'm talking about at this point, Alex, but Alligator Alcatraz has been on the headlines, and we saw over here in southern Florida, and I saw some of the conservative ink, and when I say conservative ink, I mean that there's this wide audience or this wide array of conservative commentators that has risen up over the course of the last 10 years or so, and some of them are Christ-like and Christ-centered, but it's really the extreme minority. A lot of them are governed by MAGA principles and wearing Christ banners and hats, having being Christians in their heart. They do orate for Christ. But I've been seeing them saying things such as, "Hey, at least we gave them air conditioning. Do you live in Florida? I mean, how in the heck can you you cannot live in Florida without air conditioning." They're like, "Well, at least they got nice,
Without
big,
no, you can't
comfortable
live without it, man.
beds." You can't live without air.
Yeah.
This talk about artificial intelligence. What about air conditioning, man? We shouldn't be living in these terrible states like this during the summer. So anyhow,
It's hot.
no,
It's hot here.
she got the mango. She got the mango. Burned the witch. She got the mango, and then I left in the car. And then we're driving down the street because I got this alley next to my car, and she's like an older lady, and she's walking in the middle of the alley, and I'm going down the car, so I had to honk the horn a little bit. But you try to do one of those light honks, like doot doot, but a louder honk came out, and I was like, "Oh no," So then she took the mango in her hand and she pretended like she was going to throw it at me, and we exchanged a good laugh.
Yes. So Alligator Alcatraz. If you can, let's share my screen real quick. I got this. I think I got it
You don't
pulled up
have your
here.
screen. You don't have your screen shared. And by the way, when you
What
do
happened?
mess with that again, make sure that you can hear me, because if you lose connectivity, sometimes when you reshare your screen, I see the icon that indicates that you might have an unactive browser window open, so you need to share a different browser. But again, just double check that I'm here after you do that.
Test, 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 test.
Yes, you're here.
Okay, let's see. Let me see. Alligator Alcatraz. Let's see. Test, test.
Yes.
You there?
Yep, and
Okay.
it's live.
All right. Yeah, I did. There's so many things out there, but I just wanted to. This is the actual facility here, and it's located in the middle of the Everglades. Now, I don't know if this is AI edited, where it looks like you got all these alligators surrounding it, but
It's a
Nonetheless,
moat.
I mean, they're calling it, yeah. I mean, it's called Alligator Alcatraz for a reason. Um, you know, but essentially, this is where the most dangerous illegal immigrants that ICE captures. They're going here to what is being called Alligator Alcatraz. In the middle of the Everglades here in Florida, you can see for miles on both ends. It is just a
Beautiful.
swamp that, yeah, it looks beautiful, but
Yeah.
it's probably one of the most deadliest beauties you can see. Where you have, if not millions, of alligators that are in this place, and apparently, Matt, I guess you can only can you only get here by airplane, or no, you can get here by land.
Well, it's hot accessible only about hot air balloons. Actually, they have illegal immigrant hot
Okay,
air
yeah, yeah, yeah,
balloons with warnings.
yeah.
No, and this is as a side note as we're entering into this, no more mango conversations. But they were complaining, rightfully so, I think, as we were deporting people to other countries, right? And then Trump actually introduced the idea of reopening Alcatraz. This is why this is becoming, why they're labeling it Alligator Alcatraz. So it's like, what do you want? Do you want to shipping the people off to another country to be dealt with when they're violent criminals, okay, that are at a high risk for security, or would you rather them go to an isolated place like this? And I think that the left is able to react because of how we orate things, and because sometimes when we speak about this stuff, we have the lack of compassion, and the lack of prefacing and appending, what we say, as if we actually care about people, and we really do. So I think this is overall a good thing, and the great thing about it is Governor DeSantis over here, who I've always been a fan of. I don't know why Conservative Inc. Followed in suit after Trump and attacking him so much, and we saw over the last week or so reconciliations, I guess if you would say it that, but Trump actually saying that he and DeSantis are actually good friends, and I think
They're
DeSantis
like
is a good
a
friend.
9.9. They got a 9.9 relationship.
Yeah, so they're like, DeSantis has always been good friends, and he was very faithful to us during COVID, as many people were flocking from all of these liberal states to Florida. I think this is the right place for us to do it for a high security environment, while the left is forcing us now to put all these people on trial. And they have these extremely long detainment periods. And perhaps what we'll see there is that while they're being detained in a facility like this that isn't so pleasant, I don't see any pickleball courts there. Maybe they would choose to actually self-deport. you know, it's like, do you want to stay here with no pickleball, or do you want to go back to Guatemala? I'll go back to Guatemala. They have pickleball in Guatemala. I play pickleball every day. I love
Uh,
pickleball.
yeah, man, the internet, man, they keeps on striking. Look, uh, there's this photo of Alcatraz, the original, and it says The Rock, and below it, it has Alligator Alcatraz, and it's dubbed the Croc. Oh man, look, man. I think it's a good thing. I mean, look, what kind of a message does this send to people from other countries, right? Like, nobody wants to go here. Okay, like people from other countries, you know what they're looking at when they're looking at stuff like this. Like, they're like, man, I don't want to go to America right now. I don't want to get caught and have to go over here to Alligator Alcatraz. Like, that's what they're thinking. And you know what? That's a good thing, right? It's going to make people think
Right.
twice. You
I
know,
agree with
uh,
that. I like that way of
it's
thinking. Yeah. We need these
it, it,
deterrents to deter people from
yeah, it's a deterrence,
not
man. People from
self-deporting.
other MS-13 gang members, they were like, "Hey, man, did you know? Little tidbit. He got locked up. He's over there in Alligator Alcatraz right now." He was like,
Alligator
"Man, I ain't going over.
Alcatraz.
I ain't going crocodile." He's like, "I ain't going over there right now."
I
And
think it'd be
so,
worse
I
just to
think,
give them a place with no air conditioning. We'll send you to Southern Florida and you can rot. And we did have a comment from the chat room, which just invoked a little fact checking on my case. Isabel Cruz, thank you for your comment. They spent so much making it and it flooded on day one. I know how much they spent making it, but they said that it only took about 10 days, which I'm like, what, they got the Amish and the Mennonites over there working to build this stuff? No, good for them. But it seems like that is true. I wasn't aware of that. Yes, Alligator Alcatraz migrant detention facility in Florida Everglades flooded shortly after its opening on July 1st. The garden variety South Florida summer rainstorm bringing about 1.5 inches of rain. So 1.5 inches is sort of light over here, but that is interesting. It says that it caused the water to seep into the facility's tents, spreading over the electrical cables and under the flagpoles. This occurred hours after President Trump's visit, and despite claims from Florida's emergency management director, the facility could withstand a Category 2 hurricane. Contractors reportedly addressed the issue overnight by tightening seams, with officials describing the flooding as minimal. I would say so.
Were
It rains.
there were there were there detainees there? That'd be something. Yeah, can you imagine? Can you imagine detainees, dude? Like a lot of rain that happens, bro, and the water starts rising and it starts
Ah!
coming into the
The
tents, dude.
alligators are coming in.
Could you imagine, dude? They're freaking out, dude.
Poor guys.
I mean,
Yes.
wouldn't you? I'd be
Yes.
like, man. I would hope I would be the guy on the
Can
top
I still?
bunk.
Can I still?
I don't want to
Okay,
be on the
nine
bottom
hundred
bunk,
dollars.
man.
I'll leave right now for $500. Yes, there were
Oh
detainees at
man,
Alcatraz when it opened on July 1st. Reports indicate the facility, which began operations that day, housed approximately 2,500 migrants at the time of the flooding slash almost
dude,
electrocution. I hope those are well insulated electrical cables. I know all about that.
dude. I
Yikes.
hope the alligators didn't get up in there, dude. Oh man, dude, you talk about deterrence. You talk about, dude.
Yes.
Now I know those MS-13 guys are over there in El Salvador. They're
Everybody's afraid
definitely
of
not wanting to come
alligators.
back,
Everybody.
dude. Don't nobody want to wrestle with an alligator, okay? I was doing Uber, man. I was dropping some guys off over here at Gatorland, right? And there's a big old black guy, right? And he was going over to Gatorland, and I
Racist.
was like,
Just
oh,
kidding.
yeah, I'm dead serious. I was like, oh, you guys are going to Gatorland? And he was like, yeah, him and the family, right? And I was like, oh, okay, you gonna go wrestle a gator? He goes, yeah, the first one I see. And I'm like, well, we don't got to go to Gatorland. I said, why don't we just go right over here? He was like, nah. I was like, yeah, everybody want to act
I
big
want
and bad until you
supervised
have to
gator
actually see the
wrestling.
alligator. Yeah, everybody act tough until you see an alligator, and then things get real.
Everybody acts tough
Um,
until everything.
so let's
Yeah.
talk about the rain. We're talking about a lot of rain